Welcome back to part 3 of mudding and taping a house. Mother Nature currently has indigestion, especially here in central Minnesota. 2.5 weeks ago we had below 0 temperatures. Exactly 2 weeks ago we had 6 to 8 inches of snow, and we were driving home in that. It was not fun. For the last 3 days it's been 80s and sunny, so all of the snow that we did have is gone. Rivers are flooding, and today it's only going to be about 50 degrees for a high, and it's rainy and it's cold. Not only that, but it's not very bright in here. There's no lights that are set up on the ceiling yet, and the sun is being hidden by all the clouds. So I ended up doing some Jimmy rigging. I don't know who Jimmy is, but he sure rigs up stuff a lot. So we got a little bit of a cord and an extension and a light. It's all safe, but it's just not perfect. So how we're going to start with third coat is I'm going to use a sanding head. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the areas that we applied mud for the second coat, just to smooth down some ridges, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if we take this flat joint here where we did the 10-inch box, there's some pulling here where the mud was, and also there's a little bit of a ridge right in the middle here where it shrank. So we got to get that sanded out. And also where we troweled, if you look right here, there's a little bit of a ridge, and that ridge is good. We don't want it to be the opposite where a trowel is gouging in. We just want a little bit of a ridge here, and there's another one right here. And we're just going to lightly sand over that. We don't want to make this completely smooth. If you look real close here, there's some little, must have been like a little bubbles inside the mud here. And that's the whole point of the third coat, is when we trowel this for the third time, or we put our next coat on here, that's going to go through and it's going to fill it in. We're basically just putting a skim coat on here to fill in any of those inconsistencies or imperfections. So I'm going to sand just this little area here real quick, and then I'll show you what it's going to look like after we're done, and then I'll set you up and I'll take and I'll start going through the house. Alright, I'm going to see if I can get a good angle here. So right here where we had that mud pulling before, that's just kind of nice and smooth. There are some divots in here, but that's going to get filled in with third coat. And this is far from perfect, and that's the whole point of the third coat. The second coat is a filler coat. Third coat is going to be for giving it that final look, or that final filling, and making it nice and smooth. We got a little bit of a dimple there and a ridge. So that's fine. That'll all get filled in with the third coat. As you can see here with that butt joint, that ridge that was here is now gone. So now we just have to skim coat, fill in any of these little imperfections, these little bubbles that popped. So once I'm done sanding, the next step is going to be using a mud box again. This one is essentially the exact same thing as the 10-inch box, which is here, except it's a little bit wider. It's also going to hold a little bit less mud, and it's doing a skim coat or a really thin layer versus a filler coat, which is what the 10-inch box is doing. So Just like the 10-inch box, what we're going to be using is this pump with a little bit of a flat nose on the end of here. It's a little attachment for the pump. We're going to put that right into here, and we're going to fill this cavity up with mud. So as we start pushing this back part in, that's going to push the mud out of this gap, and then there's a stainless steel blade, or a flat blade, that's going to smooth out the mud on the surface of what we've already got. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run the box over this, and because this is dried out and it's the moisture is gone, the first coat that we put on there is actually just going to be kind of a wet down coat, so to speak. It's going to put an initial amount of mud on here. It's still going to be a really thin layer, but it's just going to be kind of that pre-fill. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come over it a second time, and that should be the perfect smooth coat that we're looking for. Hopefully this stuff stays in there. So that doesn't look too bad. That was one coat, but there's little areas that are still dry that we got to get filled in. So that's where this second coat comes into play. And there you have it. So the consistency of the mud is about right. I don't have to push real hard on the handle here to get it to fill in. If it was too stiff and it needed to be thinned out, I'd have to push really hard for it to come out and fill in. But you also don't want it to be too loose where when you tip this on its side, it's going to come bubbling out of the end of the bazooka here, or not bazooka, the box. And I always hold my thumb right here, so that when I get to the end I can push on it a little bit and pull in that extra little bit of mud so it avoids piling up right down here. So my next step is going to be right here where we sanded a little bit earlier. We took the little ridges out of here, but now we have to skim coat it again. So that's where these come into play again. Well, and there you have it. There's the third coat, Skim. Lighting is terrible in here, sorry about that. All right, next step, inside corners. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this angle box, and if you remember, we had a white thing on here before, and that's what we were using to put mud on the corners for our corner bead. This time we've got what's called an angle head on here, and it's got little spring-loaded things in here, so it's got a little bit of forgiveness if your corners aren't perfect. And then what happens is, as we're pushing this handle in, this box is full of mud. Mud is going to be coming out of this spot, and it's going to disperse it both ways, and it's going to fill in the corner just perfect. So to fill this up, we're going to take the attachment here, this nose that we use for the mud boxes, and then the mud just goes right in here and fills this box up. And as you can see with the pressure, some mud was already coming out of the nose, coming out into the angle head. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to start at the top, I'm going to bring it down probably about knee height, and then it's going to take about 2, maybe 3 passes for it to fill in. That first pass is going to be kind of a filler pass, and then the second pass is going to be filling in the rest of the way and then cleaning up the edges. And if it doesn't fill in perfectly by the second time, then we'll just go over it again. Then we'll turn it around and then come up from the bottom. And there you have a filled in corner. So with the angle head, it only comes to within about 1 inch of the ceiling. So what we have to do is we have to finish bringing that up all the way to the ceiling and feather that out. Makes it a little bit easier with the pine on the ceiling, but we still have to get that stuff filled out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of mud on the corner of my trowel. I'm going to stick that in the corner and feather that out this way. Do the same thing coming down this way. And then we'll clean this edge up coming back this way. So the top is done. Now we got to do the same thing on the bottom. There you have it. One thing to keep in mind is after you get the flat parts done and the corners, there's going to be a little bit of a ridge right where you go through. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to take, and kind of like spotting screws, we're just going to fill that ridge and then we're going to clean it up. And then you're done. Once you get the flats, corners, and do the striping on where they meet, that part is done. So the last part I've got for third coat is that upper angle right up there. I just got to put another layer on there, fill in any of the gaps, or if it's shrunk where there's a screw or something like that. So we're nearing the end of third coat. So the very last thing I've got to do is we got to touch up around an outlet box, and if you remember, we had to fix a spot where it was blown out from a screw being behind the sheetrock when they were hanging it. So here's the spot where the screw was behind the sheetrock. It kind of blew out. We had to cut that out. So we'll have to put some tape over that, and then we're going to trowel it. And then this outlet right down here, if you notice how this is cut out or broken out, that's got to get patched also, because the outlet plate, the faceplate for the outlet, is not going to cover that far of a gouge. This part, I think it's going to be close enough where it should be able to cover, but definitely not that. So we're going to touch that up with some tape. That's it for the outlet, and now for the spot. And there it's patched. The purpose of this is you want to minimize the amount of mud that you have in the middle. You want to blend it in with the sheetrock coming down, so when we paint that, it's not going to be obvious that there is a spot there. So that's why the hole is just that big, but to feather it out, we want to make it bigger so that it blends in with the sheetrock. Same thing with the outlet here. We want to kind of feather that or taper it out quite a ways, so that when we put the outlet plate on also, we don't have where there's a ridge and then there's a gap behind there. We want it to just kind of lay nice and even all the way across there. So that's all I've got for you for part 3, the third coat. And the last thing we'll have to do is we're going to have to go through and we're going to have to sand everything that we just put on and make sure we go through and do some touch-ups and look for different spots with whether it be screws, whether it be indents, or maybe it's just some inconsistencies or imperfections that I might have missed. It could be like the boxes that I just fixed. Technically I should put another coat over there. We'll see what it's going to look like. If we have to put one more coat over that for a touch-up, we'll do that too. And I hope in a sense that it was somewhat educational for you. Maybe you've done taping before and you've seen all of this stuff done before, or maybe you have some comments of tips or tricks that I could be doing that would make the job easier or maybe even a better end product. So with that, I'm going to conclude this video, so stick around for part 4, which will be the sanding part. And I appreciate you sticking around watching. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you next time.